20 minutes after operation, the doctors were called over and were told that I had passed away. I was throwing my legs all over. The doctors came and surrounded my bed. And this was said to them. The patient from the theater seems to be leaving us. My name is Lydia Wambui. I'm from Kiambu County. But according to what I was told, I was born in Naivasha town. I'm a mother of 4, 3 daughters and 1 son. Growing up as an orphan, it has never been easy, maybe for those who are lucky. If at all you end up in the hands of someone not biologically connected, not many accord you love as a parent would do. So for me, I never got to experience that true love from a parent. A certain guy kept sending his sister to deliver some written notes to me, but I never replied or entertained any of the stories from him. So on my way back, fortunately or unfortunately, the vehicle I boarded, it was a van. It was belonging to them. I was not aware that they had one though. Instead of him ushering me to a light at my home stage, they went all the way to the last stage. This was the previous day when I was leaving Nairobi. I asked him, why did you not allow me to alight at my designated stage? He claimed that he wanted to escort me all the way to the gate. I agreed to it. So, after everyone had alighted, on our way back, he asked if I would like to marry him. We argued, but later on, he let me go. I boarded a motorbike home. His home was not far from mine, but I never knew his place before this.
How was your husband treating you in this marriage?
He was good towards me. That's nice. We lived happily. I delivered my firstborn. Later on, sired my secondborn. By the time I was delivering my secondborn, my grandma was diagnosed with stroke. But she was so supportive after I had opted to remain in the marriage. I guess it was out of guilt. So, my husband got used to the money from my grandma. At some point in 2013, my grandma passed away. Immediately after her burial ceremony, assuming the ceremony was like today, the next day, my husband went home with his family members. His mother had come along with 2 of her daughters. So I was left at my grandma's place and went to my husband the next day. I had been away from him almost a week plus during the mourning process. I woke up that morning and prepared some chicken and chapatis. That was my husband's favorite meal. That day, he had woken up early and went to his mother's place. By around 9 a.m., he was still not back. He later came and stood at the doorframe. Then he said to me, "Millionaire's daughter, the one who used to spoil you with money is now gone. You will now stay here as we so wish. Otherwise, you will end up on the streets." I inquired why he would say such a thing to me. Remember, he was just from his mother's house. I asked him whether that's what they say or they had been planning to say to me all along. I went to his elder sister and the mother too and told them what he had said to me. The mother was not moved at all, only the sister. I knew they were in this all together. This pained me quite much. From there on, the guy started cheating. He was not supportive at all. In the house where I used to live, most of the materials there were bought by my grandma. She really desired to see me lead a good life. This guy had nothing when we met, but we built everything together. But he was still working. He used to preach. He was lazy, kinda. He never used to man up as a husband or two in a family. I used to struggle a lot to get support from both home and his parents. He went to see his mother first. So when he came back, he came and said, "I've never desired to stay in the village. I had requested him earlier. We sell everything. We moved to town and establish a business there." So he told me he had made up his mind to move to town. I was like, finally, God has answered my prayers. We sold 2 of our cows. We left behind 4 sheep. We had some rabbits, chicken, and a calf. At this time, I had planted potatoes on an acre of land. I had some peas and maize too. This was towards the end of October. Potatoes were off season at that time, so they would fetch a lot of money in the market. I had planted all these things while he was away. So it was as if they hatch a plan for us to leave so that they can harvest my produce. The same week we were about to leave for town, I was the one winning the merry-go-round group. He left on a Saturday and went to Kabazi, near Nakuru City, to rent out a house. I was to follow next Saturday with our household items. He told me that his dad has advised him not to move with the property from home. So we had just to carry a few of the essential items that we had. I was not aware of any of the plans that they had, but I agreed anyway to his instructions. The next day, I left with a few items. Once there, he had rented a house that was round in shape. I was awed since the bed could hardly fit in there. I went ahead and sought another rental house, and I moved our things there. He was to come over that Sunday and bring along a burning stove and maize so we could grind flour. But he never showed up that Sunday. He came on a Monday at around midnight. He was accompanied by two of his sisters, since some of them resided in that town. I figured he had some attitude and I asked him, "What's up?" He told me one of his cousins had directed him to a boutique that was up for sale. I guess he had said the shop was going to be around 25,000 Kenya shillings. He told me he wants to move in there and buy out the business premises. He promised that once he settles there fully, then I can join him. So the next day, I handed over some household items to him and he left. At around 2 p.m., he called and said, "Do you know what? I am already in Naivasha." I told him, "We are about to cook lunch." He had left me with about 5,000 shillings for shopping. I was to enroll my daughter to a nursery school and establish a business, and still, this was to be used from the same 5,000 shillings. After he had left, I talked to people around and was directed to a charcoal vendor. I bought 3 sacks of charcoal. The rest, I did some shopping. Then I went to a workshop and requested them to construct a big shelf where I can stock up some green groceries. I planned to sell both charcoal and groceries. So now that I had already spent the money, he called and said that he had arrived in Naivasha. I told him I was about to feed my kids. Then he said to me, "I am done with you. From now on, you'll be by yourself." I was surprised to hear that. I thought probably I misunderstood what he said. I walked outside the house and asked him to repeat what he had said. He was the one who took almost all the money that we had. I cried the whole night. I knew deep within my heart that it's me, God, and my children. I was very devoted in church. One day, he had attended an overnight worship. It was organized by an international organization of churches. The event used to take place every month. So in this event, that's where I met my second husband. I was part of the praise and worship team. This guy used to attend the event always and kept gazing at me all the time. One day he approached me. He was so calm. You could hardly hear what he was saying while talking. So he came over and introduced himself, and we became friends. He asked for my hand in marriage, and so I started attending the same church with my in-laws. As you can see here, I have 2 earring spots. One Sunday, as we were about to leave for church, he asked why I wore 2 earrings, but all along I had the 2 spots, all along. I told him that's what I have been doing for ages. He claimed that with 2 earrings, I look like a prostitute or Jezebel. I asked him what he meant. I felt my mood ruined. He came in and slapped me. I asked him, "You slapped me now? How about when we get married?" Do you know what? Go and cancel that wedding. He wanted us to have the wedding in April, but we pushed it to November. We were 1 month away from the wedding, but now I told him I'm out. He slapped me all because of some earrings. He started the drama. He threatened to take his life, crying. He knelt down. I felt like he was serious, so I believed him. He sought forgiveness, claiming that something had triggered him to hit me. After the honeymoon, we went back home. I had already gotten pregnant. Once back, the guy was so loving, but the moment he figured I was pregnant, He changed. We were living in Githunguri town, but we moved out and relocated to Ruiru. Our bridal godfathers used to reside there in Ruiru. When he heard we had moved to Ruiru, he appointed us as assistant pastors to his church. My pregnancies are usually problematic, so I was put under bed rest. After doing the wedding in November, violence broke in January. One day in that January, my daughter went past him and unfortunately stepped on him. We were living in a congested single room. After stepping on him, the guy slapped her. After slapping her, I had to get out of bed and hold him back. I told him not to slap her and asked, "What's up?" He turned over and slapped me. Later on, he set my daughter free. But it's because I beat his hand since he was really hurting her to the point she would scream. My daughter ran away and the guy slapped me once more. I knew I was in trouble. There's a time I remember while I was about to sire our first child with him. I think I had just given birth. A teacher summoned me to school where my kids were. I went over, though I was not quite strong since it was 2 weeks after my delivery. The class teacher told me that my husband had gone over the previous day and he mercilessly battered my children. That kind of beating was dangerous. She asked if he's the biological father. I lied that he was their real father, and I felt shy. I felt shy revealing otherwise. He had warned the kids not to cry once home. Therefore, I took no notice of this. We started arguing much thereafter. The teachers wanted to report him to the area chief, but I promised to talk to him. When I revealed that he was to be taken to the chief, he said that they can go ahead and do it. He did not care.
What made you continue hanging in this marriage?
Where else would I go? Again, I had added another child. We had just had a church wedding. I'm married to a pastor. People believe in pastors, so by default, I would be labeled the bad one. I remember when the baby was 2 weeks old, I was from the washroom outside since we used to stay in a single room. There's something he said to me. I don't remember what it was, but I responded back. But I guess he felt I answered him rudely. When I got into the house, he came after me. He slapped me to a point I fell down and fainted. When I regained consciousness, he was trying to offer first aid. I hopped on bed and asked why he slapped me. He asked me why I responded to him rudely. I tried apologizing if at all I talked back to him rudely in any way. At the time, I was not aware that I was pregnant with his second child. In total, I would have 4 kids. I told him that I felt as if I'm pregnant. I went for some tests. Results showed that I was pregnant. The other child was still young, hardly 2 years old. My husband used to work at construction sites. He had left the company job. A while back, I had secured a job at a certain shop. But before that job, we had fallen into huge debts. So I managed to clear the debts and we moved out. I'm the one who bought majority of the household items. So after we moved out, he used to work at faraway sites. One time, he came home unexpectedly and he claimed that God had revealed to him that he should be a full-time pastor. I was like, I'm on bed rest, I can hardly work. Now that God has revealed this to you, how do we survive? How do we pay rent? He claimed that God promised to provide. Earlier on, he was an assistant pastor, so he felt he can become a full-time pastor. He did not like struggling a lot, so I think he felt being a pastor would be more easier. Again, back in church, people used to like him a lot. The pastor was always away, so most of the time we were the ones running the church. I think he figured people in church like him. We really suffered. I was pregnant, and most of the time, we went without food. There's a certain number of that church. She had a shop where they sold soap. My husband would go there, they'd buy him breakfast and lunch. How about you? He didn't care. We ate once in a while. At some point, he started selling household items for survival. The members noticed that Pastor was not having a job. So within the week, some members would pass by and visit him. The main pastor figured that at some point the church members were frequenting our place a lot. He made up some issues. My husband and I were excommunicated from that church. He was angry at that people that used to visit us a lot. But they did so because I was pregnant and my husband claimed that God called him to full-time ministry, yet he had no church of his own. God had kept reassuring him that he would still provide. After we were kicked out of the church, we stayed close to 1 month without attending any church. We joined one of the renowned churches here in Kenya. He introduced himself and requested the main pastor there, if at all, they can lend him an umbrella of their church to establish his.
Were you ill at the time, or when did your illness set in?
At the time, I was unwell, but did not take it seriously. I was so around this place. I think out of all those stress, the illness got worse. In that process, I talked to a fellow lady member in the previous church in Ruiru. I requested this lady to convince my husband that she would support him. And we got to establish some business. She managed to convince him and set up a business. She handed over the first stock freely. We sold everything out and went on with the business. Now that we had some money, the guy started getting proud. We moved out into a new town center. We leased out 2 single rooms. And in the compound, we set up a big church capable of housing over 250 people. From the business, my husband would take the profits and buy construction materials. We went on suffering in the house. Out of that pressure and stress, my thyroid got sore. Once at the hospital, this was during the corona pandemic, I was informed that I'm at high risk and I was supposed to go in for emergency operation.
At high risk. Nahitaji emergency operation.